Hail, the Celts are here, and you've got to give it that extra little bite because we're coming into a midweek. We're coming into Fortress Paradise, Fortress Parkhead for the UEFA Champions League match day 5 as Celtic host Club Brugge. And this is a game that I think Celtic fans are right ready for. This is the game where we're going to get the real proof in the pudding. We've had some fantastic results already. You might say somewhat against the grain, somewhat against expectations, of course, getting that draw away in Italy against Atalanta, beating RB Leipzig at Celtic Park in the last match day of the Champions League. But now, in this game, we face a much different threat. This is very much like looking in the mirror. We're very much coming up against a team that are of a very similar standing, stature, wage budget, transfer expense, all that kind of stuff. And this is very much a game where a different animal. We're not the underdogs trying to get the result against a run of play, and we're definitely not the out-and-out favourites like we were against Bratislava, where we should be sweeping them aside. This game is going to be much more about the fine margins and much more about really who wants it on the night. In the video today, we're going to be previewing Celtic versus Bruges, predicted lineups for both teams, as well as how we expect the game to pan out, as well as how Celtic could go and get the victory in this one. We also had a fantastic video drop on the channel with Scott previewing, what Bruges are bringing, what they're thinking, what their expectations are, and really how their Champions League campaign has been going earlier on the channel. If you've missed that, it will be linked at the end of this video at any point. But if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and get into the comment section on this one, guys. And it's time for those score predictions. Let me know what you think the score is going to be on Wednesday night as we welcome Club Brugge to Paradise in a game that really could just tip us over the top and really compound all the fantastic work that Celtic have done over the last couple of games. The comment section on these videos are always on fire, and I'm looking forward to catching them on this one. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. And where better to start off than with the current standings. Now, for Celtic fans, this is how the Champions League table currently looks at the moment. Sitting in 15th on 7 points, within touching distance of making it a real dream campaign. But this is how the Champions League group looks if you're a Club Brugge fan. So far, after 4 games, have won 2 and lost 2. But with only 1 point actually separating the teams, the table's maybe a little bit tighter at this stage of the proceedings than maybe you would like to think in terms of the difference in the positions and all the rest of it. But Bruges have scored 3 goals, have conceded 6. Celtic have scored 9, conceded 9. And I think that does tell us a lot about what to expect when it comes to Club Brugge. Now, Bruges themselves have been on like a pretty decent run. They made headlines this weekend by beating St Truden by 7 goals to 0 in a very convincing performance, very high scoring game. But as we look at how they've played so far this year, domestically and in Europe, it's very, very rare you see them score more than 2 goals in a game. The last time they did that was away to Kortrijk, who are one of the bottom teams in the Jupiler Pro League, and when they were at home to Cercle Bruges, their rival, their derby, who are also, they actually made European football this year, but generally speaking, they never win those derbies. It's very much one-way traffic for Club Brugge. And yeah, when you go back to the way the season started for them, Bruges are certainly not in their kind of vintage best self. And I think the Champions League, I was going to say results, but let's say matches when it comes to Bruges, really do show everything that they're going to be bringing to the table on this one. In match day 1, they played Borussia Dortmund, who, again, we've got a really good idea of how that game could have went, how dangerous Dortmund are and really where their strengths lie, especially going back to match day 1. We played them on match day 2, and this game looks like Dortmund have probably steamrollered them quite similarly to the way it went against us, but actually no, this game was 0-0 all the way to the 76th minute, and Borussia Dortmund had to win it from the bench, with Bino Gittins dropping 2 goals from the bench, as well as Jurassic coming off the bench to put the game over the line. And you can even see just from a bird's eye view on this team here, where all their good stuff came from was their fullbacks, and from Skov Olsen here out in the wide areas, with having like 40% possession in this one, giving away a bucket of fouls and not really doing too well in the duels and all the rest of it. Bruges kind of were lambs to the slaughter, very much was a backs against the wall performance. And although they didn't get hammered as hard as we did against Dortmund, they were at home, and Dortmund actually started a lot of those guys from the bench against us, so wee bit of a different actual kind of comparison there, as it were. But I think it does give you a bit of an insight that their midfield and their attackers didn't really have much of a better time than ours did, certainly. They followed that up in match day 2 with a 1-0 victory over Sturm Graz, where, they dominated possession, they really got a lot of shots away, they were really trying to win this match, but Sturm Graz maybe gave them a little bit of, a taste of their own medicine, as it were, from when Bruges hosted Borussia Dortmund. But we can see they've had a bit of a change in midfield. Jashari and Onyedika partnering Lord Hans Vanaken in the centre midfield there to, a strong 3 points on the road, it must be said, with Maxime de Kuiper standing up, with Tzolis standing up. The centre-back's doing a pretty decent job as well. They follow that up with a 3-1 loss in the San Siro. Again, I think we can all imagine how that feels and how that game pretty much went. But getting a man sent off in the 40th minute was certainly crucial for them. Because at 1-0 down, to go down to 10 men, again, we've been there in the San Siro, but I think that was more Inter Milan that happened, wasn't it? Van Dijk gets sent off. But, even at 10 men and 1-0 down, they got an equaliser. They brought it back to 1 each before AC Milan, went up a gear and put the game beyond them with a 3-1 victory in the end. But they did get a lot of headlines for beating Aston Villa in the last match day by 1-0. Lord Hans Vanaken coming in with a penalty goal in this one. And again, we see the fullbacks have been really prominent in this match. We see the Jashari guys start again, but no Onyedika, because obviously he was suspended after the sending off. And in this game again, they didn't have the majority of possession. That's 3 games out of 4 where they've been, the lesser of the two teams when it comes to, putting your foot on the ball and controlling and dictating the tempo of the game. And although this is like a shock result, beating Aston Villa, which might give us a bit of hope before the last match day, having covering Aston Villa for the last 2 seasons on my main channel, Quinny3001 on YouTube, Aston Villa at the moment are not as free scoring and not as dangerous as they were last year, and they're kind of missing a little bit of something. And although at this point when Bruges did beat them, it was a bit of a shock because Villa just beat Bayern Munich and they'd just been doing pretty well in the league up to that point. There was warning signs there that Aston Villa could have went into a game, and if they didn't get, the goals that they normally get from the likes of Watkins, Bailey's kind of dried up for performance this year, but McGinn and Rodgers, some other players like Ramsey, have been in and out with availability and fitness and whatnot. I think McGinn might have even got injured in this game, if memory serves me right. And I think one thing we can definitely take out of looking at their past Champions League performances and really looking at how they've been going so far this year is they're very consistent in their selection, they're very consistent in their tactics, and really, if they've got the fullbacks on song, De Kuiper and Seas can get really high up the pitch and give some width, then they can take goal scoring opportunities, and especially with the confidence of beating Aston Villa recently and then that 7-0 victory at the weekend, they've got to be peaking right now. They've got to be coming into the best form possible. This is a projected 11 that we've got to face Celtic from Club Brugge, from local experts and all the rest of it for this weekend. And again, from the interview Josh did on the channel, it does sound like Jukla, out of the 50-50 split of who will start, he thinks that will be the guy that will come on to start for Club Brugge. As for the Celtic team, I'm not expecting any surprises or any curveballs to come from Brendan Rodgers, although there is a few options, one in each area of the pitch really, that is still maybe a little bit unclear, and if there was a curveball, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world. For defence, it's certainly left back. With Taylor starting the Hearts game, I think a lot of people are now of the opinion that Taylor is still the number 1 left back, with him and Valley having extended periods in the squad through Taylor being injured, giving Valley that opportunity. Brendan and the rest of the coaching team and even the rest of the squad have had good opportunities to play with both players, and you can see exactly what both players offer: strengths, weaknesses, potential to develop, etc. And it feels like the back 4 will pick itself. We'll still have trusty Carter Vickers and Alistair Johnson, along with Kasper Schmeichel making up the defence, which has become domestically a bit of a clean sheet machine. And we just need to look at how amazing the defensive performance was against Atalanta to know that we can really rely upon our defence in these games. And really, with the exception of this intruding game, like I've mentioned already, Club Brugge are not this free-scoring, all-out attack, exciting European force that maybe that result in the Aston Villa game would maybe lead you to think. If Ferran Jugla is the one to start, he's much more of a kind of fox in the box. He's much more of a finisher in the final 20 yards, can score all types of goals. He's a Barcelona, don't know if you won't know Alex Valley or anything like that, but he's a Barcelona B, he's a La Masia graduate that when Bruges signed him, there was definitely a lot of competition for his signature. Him partnered by the likes of Skov Olsen and Tzolis coming through from the wide areas is going to be their primary route to goal, are going to be the main danger players. And on the left-hand side, there's going to be big questions asked because Skov Olsen has been a bit of a talent around European football that does get a lot of headlines and has gained a lot of interest. But the biggest test on the pitch for me is going to be in midfield. Now, I really do hope that we see a departure from the midfield shape that we played against Hearts, and we see a return to the dynamic that we had in the last couple of matches before the international break, before the Hearts game, where maybe Engels is much closer to McGregor, and McGregor has that freedom to penetrate through the centre here, giving Hatate just more freedom to roam and pick up different pockets, because this Jashari, Onyedika, Michele and Ordonez, they're going to make that tight box in the middle of the ground to cover the defence and protect the box, allowing the fullbacks to do what they want them to do, which is get a lot higher. But they don't have a lot of creative threat through the middle. For them, it is going to all be about the wide areas, and for us especially, we want to drive through the middle. Our best players are in the centre of the pitch in terms of the most dangerous players to take the ball from back to front and create goal scoring opportunities and all the rest of it. And I think this will be a big game for Hatate to really show his level. But for me, the dynamic in the midfield has to be absolutely spot on, because physically, if we get caught out of possession, like these guys are big, strong, and smart enough where if we turn the ball over in midfield, we're trying to play passes that aren't coming off, or we're stretching the midfield far too much and we're just letting them really anchor in and gain control of the centre ground. We'll lose more of the possession, we'll lose turnovers of the ball, and with the pace that they have from the wide fullbacks, and then the three that they've already got up in the final third there, they will create problems for us. Interestingly, Kasper Schmeichel did very, very well in the Belgian league for Anderlecht in the short time he was there. He came up against Bruges 3 times, a win, a loss and a draw. No clean sheet, sadly. And although Schmeichel is a fantastic goalkeeper, we just cannot we can't leave him out there. We can't sacrifice the goalkeeper with having a really high defensive line when these guys could be breaking forward and really, just setting up tap-ins for their strikers. We need to be, controlling the play, and the midfield needs to be there for the defence, needs to be able to cut out those passing lanes, needs to be, playing both sides of the ball very effectively. So I think if we aren't able to play both sides of the ball very well, we get back in nice and tight and deep, and then when we win the ball back, the guys we have love breaking into space. They love going forward. They love zipping the ball into feet and then going and overlapping and supporting. And that quick turnaround, that quick transition of play, especially at Celtic Park under the floodlights, Fortress Paradise, is going to be a great source of joy for us, I feel, because these fullbacks are going to get high and you don't need to give them that much encouragement. So we need to make sure the centre ground is really difficult for them to play through, where they want to go out wide, where they're happy. That's their plan, obviously. But then we are ready to just spring in and get into the spaces that they're vacating here, because especially if Kyogo's starting, we'll come on to the forwards in a second, but pace and transition, pace in the counter-attack is 100% going to be a massive weapon for us. On the counter to that, just in general, we're thinking about patterns of play and all the rest of it. Like Bruges, as you've seen, they're 1 point behind us. After this, they've got really tough games against like Juventus and Man City and these types of teams. This is kind of their cup final. This is one of their last opportunities to get a real credible 3 points on the board in their eyes. So they'll be coming into this for me with a bit of cup final mentality, where they might just try and bide their time a little bit longer. They might try and wait for us to commit something forward first, to make a mistake that they then go and capitalise upon. And that's probably going to be a likely period of the match in terms of a game state and all the rest of it. And again, it's going to be really on the midfield to recognise the opportunity, to control it. And we need to make sure that we do the best thing possible to unlock the likes of Nicholas Kuhn, and try and get Dyson and Kyogo to be in here as like a front pair, is to be a 2 almost, if we can focus things on the right hand side, because the Kuiper, number 1, is very, very good at going forward, but not that great defensively. And we've seen, like I spoke about this in my Hearts breakdown, but if we really go down this side of the pitch, yes, it does leave him space that he could break into and maybe catches, of course, but the deeper we can keep him and the more occupied he can be, the less he will be forward, and just it's like clipping the wings of the bird, as it were. You're just taking that off them, because Skov Olsen and Tessolis are good wide players and all the rest of it, but their real width is going to come from the fullbacks going on and supporting and really helping out the wide areas. And with that in mind, it comes into the next question mark. I think this is going to be Engels, McGregor and Hatate, but big old Bernardo into this midfield would not be a bad move either, to be honest with you, because he is just much more disciplined at being safe, being composed and being compact and really just doing the right thing. Although in this type of situation, he's not always the guy that can really break the lines, especially when you're dominating possession like this. But when the ball's kind of bobbling about, no one can really get their hand on it, as we've seen at the weekend against Hearts. Like, he just gets in there and he'll make the ball his own. And, he's going to be very valuable in this match, no matter if he plays for 30 minutes, for 60, for 90 or whatever it might be. But for me, I think Arne Engels, similarly to Hatate, has got a real coming of age game potentially on the cards here. For Hatate, it's more about that we're against equal standing opposition, and this is a great opportunity to step above the level and to stand out here. But for Engels, this is much more of, kind of going back to your old team, going back to your old school or your old company or whatever, and showing them like, hey, you were wrong to not give me the chance, and I've kicked on. Belgium senior international now, one of the top assist makers in the Champions League to date so far at this point already. And I think he will come into this game with a real bit between the teeth, where he'll go on to try and prove something, because Hans Vanaken is probably the final form of what Arne Engels turns into. So the Celtic fans will be really good to see. I think for any of you guys that are still unsure about Engels, like, what does he offer? What is his ceiling? What could he become? I think, let's see how Vanaken plays, but generally, like, the style of player Vanaken is, where he could play really anywhere in midfield. Number 10 is where he's kind of displayed on screen here. Centre defensive mid, box to box. Sure, he's not got a huge engine for pace and all the rest of it, but he basically is a midfielder's midfielder. And that's very much my opinion of Engels. And I do think that you'll kind of see, not necessarily a master Padawan thing kind of going on here, but maybe like what the Engels type player looks like once they're a 10-year professional, or once they've won a bunch of league titles and done all this kind of stuff. Because Vanaken, again, similarly to Engels, was a Belgium senior international and playing with the peak Belgium team, in World Cups and Euros and all the rest of it. And this is a guy that, he's called Lord Hans here, with the fantasy football stuff I got on with. Vanaken is a hero because he does so well for Bruges. And West Ham and a bunch of other teams have offered big money to him over the last couple of years, wages, transfer fees, and he always just rejects it. He wants to stay at Bruges, he wants to win league titles. Very similar, you might think, to Callum McGregor, these types of guys, which is very admirable in current football. And one of the kind of nicknames he's picked up over the years is Lord Hands. So he's definitely a guy that I think you keep your eyes on Wednesday night when we play him. And definitely you'll see some similarities between him and Engels. And then Vanaken's probably a big reason why Engels didn't hang about Bruges, because imagine you had another McGregor type player coming through the ranks. They're going to look at that and go, listen, I'm not getting in that team anytime soon. So Engels, I think, does have a point to prove. I don't know if it'll be quite a chip on the shoulder, but he's going to have a bit between the teeth. And I think, no matter about form and all that kind of stuff, as long as he's fit and capable, you start him in this one. And for him and Hatate, it's really their time to put a show on. Now, when it comes to the front three, I think undoubtedly Daisen Maeda is for these types of occasions, is for these types of games. And against a kind of young rookie type player like a Joaquin Sees here, like this will be either a frustrating one for Daisen if this guy's really good and like physically, like he looks the part. Belgian players generally are quite good defensively and that sort of stuff in terms of game IQ. Daisen will really need to be on his best. We'll need to be really fit and firing. We'll need to get that semi-final Daisen back, because outside of that semi-final, recently, he's not been at full tilt. He's not really been totally on it. So this will be a huge game for him to not only track this guy, because that'll be a big feature of the match as well, probably with Skov Olsen on this side of the pitch. You can imagine that they are going to want to target down our left, like most other teams try and do. And Daisen will have a big shift on his hands going both ways. Similarly to Nicholas Kuhn, and I think coming into this game, knowing he's against a De Kuyper, he will be like going up and down the line, having to win the ball back, and I'm sure he'll be all action throughout this game. And I think those two very much do pick themselves. But for me, Kyogo is the third question mark into this team, because he has not been hitting his straps recently. I know he got a goal at the weekend, which was hard earned and hard fought for. And at Celtic Park, if we are bursting away into space, I think you want the wee man really putting the fear of God into Ordonez and Brandon Michele here, because you just never know when he's going to pop up, and he's one-touch finisher, two-touch take a shot. He's just the finisher, and he's always going to just be putting these guys on high alert, keeping them on their toes, as it were. But if they are going to come into this game and they are going to forfeit periods of possession to us, Ida is maybe going to be the way to go, because he got the 2 goals at the weekend. He does have enough pace, I think, for this type of game. And especially with the first goal being so crucial, like if we really do come flying out the traps, you don't know what the first chance is going to be like, mate. It might be a wee lofty ball in from Kuhn to the back post. It might be one from Engels down into the channel or something like that. But the first chance has to hit the back of the net. And for me, Kyogo is definitely a finisher. He's definitely a great striker. We all love him and all the rest of it. But right now, the first chance of the game, I would probably want it to fall to Adam Ida, just to make sure that we beat Mingen here. Simon Mignolet, you might remember him from when he played at Sunderland, and goes and really take control of the game state very quickly. Because like I mentioned, this is like cup final mentality for them. Sure, we've got a wee bit of comfort, but really if we don't get 3 points in this game, a lot of the hard work that we did against Leipzig and against Atalanta will be somewhat diminished. We need to really compound those good results by winning this game first and foremost. And this is result over style for me 100%. But there's a Engels Bernardo, Taylor Valley, Ida Kyogo. 3 somewhat question marks for who will be starting, because Kyogo maybe in the final ebbings of the game, the final 20 or 30 minutes, normally the Ida time that he gets, Kyogo could be wildly effective in that time. If we're 1-0 up, maybe it's a draw at that stage, and his real pace and real energy might be a difference maker. So there's definitely more than one way to skin the cat. There's a few tactical approaches here we could see from the manager, but above all else, I just hope we get Engels being a little bit tighter, being a little bit deeper, allow McGregor that little bit of freedom to go into the middle here, like really cat amongst the pigeons stuff, and really just ask some difficult questions of them. And McGregor going into the final third, going by people in these positions here is so dangerous, and he's got a great eye for a pass. He's not a selfish player, and he's on great form now for it, let's be honest. And with Hatate doing a very similar job, but with more freedom, because Engels will be pinned in a bit tighter to roam and go and make these guys check their shoulders every 2 minutes. And alongside the likes of Kyogo and Daisen, really swarm them and give them all that pressure with the floodlights on, Celtic Park in full song. That's the environment that makes Fortress Parkhead what it is, Fortress Paradise. And, we're on a great run domestically and in Europe at home, where we are back to being our all-conquering selves. And it's all about the fine margins in this one, and I really do feel that a lot of them are in our favour, but we cannot count our chickens before they hatch, because if we are careless in possession, if we don't take our chances, they do have pace, they do have good football IQ, they've got a good solid tactical system, and even like I'm talking about how they don't score that many goals, they don't actually really concede that many either, as I'm not a big fan of Mignolet. I don't think Brandon Michele is a Champions League level player, and Ordonez I've not really seen much of, I'm not too sure on him. But we should be scoring goals in this one, no two ways about it. This might be a case of the best defence actually winning rather than the best attack, because, I wouldn't be surprised if this game finished 2-1, 3-2 to Celtic, something like that. But equally, we could go on and win this game like 1 or 2-0 if it's quite tight, quite nip and tuck, because as much as Tizolis and Skov Olsen are headline makers, they could be difference makers. I could see us keeping them quiet, no problem at all, because that midfield three can be boxed out, and our front power can really make it difficult for these guys to get high up the pitch from fullback, which does make them a Champions League team. That's what brought them to this level, so it's brought them points already. I know the Villa game was a penalty, but Sturm Graz and obviously winning their league last year and all the rest of it. So I'm really excited for this game. I'm actually going to be at the Bruges Youth Champions League game for Celtic here again. This will be our third home game where I'll be going. We've seen Bratislava, we've seen Leipzig. So the Bruges game should make for an interesting viewing as well. But I'm also going to be at the big time. I'm going to be at the main event, 8 o'clock Wednesday night at Fortress Paradise, and I'll be on some media duties after the game as well, so fingers crossed it's a good result. We'll get to ask maybe the manager or a player or whatever some interesting thoughts, feelings, questions after the game. We'll see how it all pans out. I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. If you are going to the game, travel safe, have a great time, of course. Enjoy the party we're having in the Champions League, everyone. On screen and now some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy, including that video Josh did on getting the inside track on Club Brugge. Don't forget to jump into the comments section, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. Hail, hail, Mo on the hoops!